Late last night, we got an update on how the vengeance mechanic is going to work in Mr. Pandaria. Now, you might not be a tank, so you think this isn't going to affect you, and you couldn't care less, but trust me, it will. Because so far, Blizzard have added the tome to allow flying at level 85 for your ults. They're now reverting Vengeance from 5.4 to a more 5.0 state, which actually makes Vengeance more powerful, and I do honestly think this is just one of many changes to come. I was crying in a video a couple of days ago about the fact that I'd love to see Blizzard more hands-on and taking risks and doing what they can to keep the classes balanced, make Mist of Pandaria this time around even more fun than it was before, which, don't get me wrong, it was really fun the first time round. And as soon as I saw these changes, I thought, quick, who can I talk to that's gonna really know the nitty-gritty about every single change when it comes to Vengeance? Before I wake him up and drag him out of bed though, which he's going to absolutely hate me saying because it was me that had to get woken up this morning, make sure you check out the link in the pinned comment in the description to Rested XP. They have now put the pre-order guides out for Mr. Pandaria, where you'll also get the pre-quest stacking guide before launch, so the best 25 quests to stack up, items that you're going to need, all that jazz just to get a head start. It is an affiliate link, so any guys bought go towards supporting the channel, so thanks in advance for that. And let's get into it. When it comes to talking about tank changes, I thought there was one really good person to get involved in this, and that's the DK class guide writer on Wowhead, and I mean, everyone knows him, he's been on the podcast. He's the go-to DK tank guy, Riani.
Hey, don't forget Prot Warrior. Prot Warrior section is now on Wowhead, so...
Oh, you're doing Prot Warrior as well now?
That's
I didn't
right.
know you was doing
That's
Prot
Warrior
Warrior as well. Oh, that's cool. Congratulations. You're
Thank
great.
you.
You're slowly taking over Wellhead. That's what I like to see.
Shh, don't let them onto my plan.
How are you doing anyway? You all right?
Doing all right. I'm super excited, with the announcements last night, so I think let's just get into it.
Cool. Okay, so for anyone who's not aware, there were some Vengeance changes that went out last night, and if you caught the news straight away, you would have been wondering why it was only Brewmaster that was getting the buff, but it wasn't Brewmaster. It was just, Blizzard being Blizzard. It's all tank specializations. So I'll tell you what, Riani, why don't you explain to everybody what are these changes?
Okay, so starting with what is Vengeance? Vengeance is obviously a way for you to gain attack power when you take damage. And the iteration that we had right now was the 5.4 version of Vengeance, which meant that the 1.5% of the unmitigated damage that you took was translating to attack power, which meant that, with a lot of attack power, that means a lot of damage. It means a lot of active mitigation. With the changes in 5.4, they were drastically tuned down from the original version where you saw tanks just go absolutely nuts in the beginning of the expansion. What's happened now was that Blizzard thought it would be a good idea to bring that form of Vengeance back, and as a tank, I am very happy about it. What it essentially boils down to is an across-the-board 25% increase in Vengeance. It translates into way more Vengeance when you're attacking many targets, and it also removes some of the, let's say, unintended ways of cheesing Vengeance. So that is what happened with the Blue Post, and across the board, every single tank should be way more fun in Miss Pandaria.
So that's basically the first thing that I looked at was, exactly what have they taken from pre-5.4, what have they taken from 5.4, and it looks like they pretty much just went, all of the 5.4 changes, gone. And we're having a 5.0 Vengeance.
You don't get Vengeance from Standing in Fire, which will have big implications, for sure, especially when we're looking at challenge modes and competing with the old times. Because I'm assuming that they're not going to bring that back for challenge mode that we will get, I think it's tonight, when the beta update goes live, we'll get challenge modes.
Mm-hmm.
And the second one is, of course, not being able to sit down for crits.
Yeah.
Crits will still give you 50% Vengeance, so effectively canceling itself out.
Yeah, so they left out the two complete ways to cheese, basically, to cheese Vengeance, and they've done the same with the whole being able to double stack cooldowns, which that is a very popular monk method. And I mean, when you look at any, speaking about challenge modes, when you look at any really fast 2-3 minute clear times on YouTube or anything like that from back in the day, it's all about getting that first big burst of Vengeance from Zen Med and Diffuse Magic as a Brewmaster, and then slapping your way through. Obviously, we'll get into the ramifications of this or why as someone who's going to play a Brewmaster, obviously I'm really excited because Brewmaster doing the raid on the beta the weekend felt really strong. It felt really fun. It felt like I expected it to feel. I didn't think the actual tank damage coming in was particularly high, not compared to what I'm used to on private servers. You know, on an Elegon Breath on Heroic, for example, you haven't got a cooldown up, you're going to die. On the beta, it was very much like, I don't even need to use a cooldown. You know, like it wasn't doing the same amount of damage. So based on the fact that I felt pretty powerful the weekend with these changes as well, and Vengeance has been bugged on the beta, right? It's been like, I rarely see over like 10k.
Yeah, so there was a bug that was causing previous encounter. When you were in a previous encounter, for the diminishing returns from that boss to stay with the current encounters, you were fighting your main target as if it was, the 10th ad that you were fighting. So sometimes it worked, but most of the times it didn't. But yeah, when Vengeance worked, it felt good, felt great, and now it's going to feel even better.
With the fact that obviously it's great that we're going to be doing more damage, but also the survivability, from the guards or from shield barriers or whatever, it's just going to feel. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the next raid test with these buffs in. Like that would be. I think it's going to be quite fun to see. Just to fly through. So for anyone that doesn't know, what they've basically done is the amount of vengeance that you're going to get from attack power, where it was 1.5% of the damage you've took, it's now 1.8%. Like that's one of the big changes. The other one that Riani was talking about when it comes to tanking loads of ads is in 5.4 they nerfed it, so there was diminishing returns. So anything outside of your primary target, like you've got less vengeance from multiple targets. Like that's now not going to be the case. Do we think on that basis doing big pulls, like running in and doing a big pull in a dungeon, in a raid, like are we going to be able to cap vengeance very quickly, do you think? Or is it still going to feel like quite a slow process?
I think vengeance capping will probably still require some cheesiness to it, for sure. It is still only about 20 to 25% increase in vengeance on single target. But it does, of course, have some very interesting implications for when you have the ability to either bring in ads from trash into the boss with you, or if you're able to tank a lot of the encounter that was meant for more than one tank. We're talking about Stone Guard, we're talking about Windlord in Heart of Fear, for example. In those type of cases, you might be able to get vengeance cap actually, and that has some pretty interesting implications for how you gear and obviously how many tanks you bring and what type of tactics you use. So
I think it's needless to say that these changes you're excited for. You think they're really positive. Do you think they're really positive as in, like, you can be honest here, do you think they was needed? Like, outside of the obvious one, which was the being able to cheese ridiculous amounts of vengeance with, clever use of cooldowns. Do you think this is more like this is going to help tanks? Or do you think this is more Blizzard getting hands-on and making changes that sort of send waves out to the community to be like, look, we are actually going to be paying a lot of attention to Mr. Pandaria. This is the first step.
I am not totally sure about the intention. I will say that I'm very, very pleasantly surprised that they're actually more hands-on, because that's something that we've very much lacked in Cataclysm. Rip Prot Warriors. But I will say that I don't think it was needed at all. When Vengeance worked during the testing this weekend, Vengeance was great. Like, if people were complaining about, tank damage is not really that important. Well, it's because you're probably looking at pulls where it was bugged, but you were still miles ahead of anyone else on Will of the Emperors when the Vengeance is working properly. You're still providing good utility to the raid. But I do think that the current state of things made the tanks kind of not as close in power levels as we originally had anticipated or thought. Going into Miss Pandaria, everyone's always like, well, the tank balance is very, very close. You can play any tank and be just fine. And that was still true. However, there was a big, big, big rift between Blood EK and every other tank with the testing this week. And I expect with the Vengeance changes for that to be at least defensively, brought into line a little bit more, so that you can actually play any tank and it be relatively close.
So I'll tell you what, we'll jump straight into that, and I'll put the actual changes, the blue post on screen, so people can just have a read through while we're just talking about the next topic, which I think is really important, and it comes off the back of what you just said. That Blood DK would be the go-to tank. It was far and away the strongest tank in the beta weekend. Now, I kind of think back to the podcast that we done a few months ago. Like it was quite a while ago now, where you said that actually the reason Blood DK is going to be really strong is because of its it's not as reliant on Vengeance as the other tanks, because of the way it relies on how much damage you take as to how much your blood shield does, etc. So it's like there's not that direct correlation between Vengeance and being a really powerful Blood DK. Is that what we've just seen? Because the Vengeance has been quite bugged, or not in an amazing state, the Blood DK then just shone because of that.
Exactly. It's not necessarily so much that that Blood DK's toolkits have been way better than the other tanks. It's just that the other tanks have been so reliant on providing their main utility through Vengeance. Prot warriors, they couldn't really use shield barrier, their main form of active mitigation, because it didn't do anything. Brewmasters, like the raid guard, didn't do anything because they didn't get enough damage and enough Vengeance to make it even useful. And so in that sense, it's much more brings up the classes that previously couldn't really do much with the Vengeance. So yeah, exactly.
We've got to make assumptions now because we haven't seen the changes in effect. We haven't gone back to do the second raid testing. But based on this information, where would you place the tanks now? In terms of viability, what would be the go-to main tank, off tank?
Still very much the case, in my opinion, that Blood DK is the strongest class, but you will have fights where Brewmaster is a way stronger main tank, for example. And so having the ability to flex between those two will be fantastic. With the changes, all the other tanks catch up in survivability to Blood DK. I don't think that they necessarily overtake or are even on the same axis when it comes to survivability, but they at least catch up. One of the problems, however, is that Blood DK is already way ahead on single target of the other tanks, but because of some of the attack power scalings with spells versus melee strikes, there is a very big possibility that Blood DKs will just, the gap between single target DPS of the tanks will just widen because of this change. Especially because now in the beta as well, there has been some developments. We've been cooking up a lot of theory crafting in the Discord. We're already seeing that there's going to be a base increase compared to previous Blood DK iterations in spell power damage by about 10 to 15%. And now it's going to be even more compounded because of the attack power changes. So single target, Blood DK is going to be king. I'm not just saying that because I'm the Blood DK guy. That is just how it is. But survivability, I think they're way more in line now.
I've got to agree. As someone who's anti Blood DK, well, not anti, that's a bit extreme, but you know what I mean. I would never ever talk about DK in a positive light by choice. But yeah, no, I've got to agree. I think Blood DK, in terms of single target DPS, I don't see that changing at all. With the Vengeance changes, they are incredibly strong in the right hands as well. I just want to throw out there because I've seen some very varying results. On the beta, looking through logs, seeing Blood DKs, like the damage difference from Blood DK to Blood DK is huge. It's not just like, they're all around the same. So it is probably worth mentioning. It's not just play a Blood DK and win. It's play a Blood DK and play it well, and you're gonna excel.
Exactly. That's something I maybe want to touch on as well. Is that in Mist of Pandaria, or in Cataclysm rather, you could play Blood DK and just hit your buttons, and you would be the best tank. If you had an amazing, incredible min-maxer of a Prot Warrior, compared to a 25th percentile Blood DK, you just pressing buttons and hoping for the best, the Blood DK would still be better than the absolute best player on Prot Warrior. That is absolutely not the case in Mist of Pandaria. And especially with Blood DK, there is a lot of optimization, and the skill ceiling is way, way, way higher. Arguably the highest out of any tank, with the changes that now came into Brewmaster monks. Yeah, the results may vary.
Yeah, absolutely. There's one thing I'm looking forward to when it comes to Brewmaster, and it's I'm kind of hoping that these Vengeance changes kind of enable it to happen far sooner. But a lot further down the line in Siege of Orgrimmar is when it's prevalent. But as a Brewmaster, being able to get really, really high Vengeance, or predict that high Vengeance is about to come in, and then use Invoke Zuen, the White Tiger. Because when you use that Tiger with massive amounts of attack power, I mean, the damage that thing does is actually ridiculous. And I think when it comes to talking about Brewmaster specifically, it's going to be things like that, probably. I can't really relate properly when it comes to DK because I don't know Blood DK very well, but, that would be the difference between a really good Brewmaster and an average Brewmaster. An average Brewmaster wouldn't use Zuen correctly. They'll just use it because it's their cooldown, rather than being like, I'm about to take loads of damage, my Vengeance is going to spike, let's have it out ready. And I'm guessing it is that sort of future planning as a Blood DK where you can get more damage out.
Certainly. There is a lot of interesting min-maxy stuff. Our Suen is army this time around. Like, you don't just throw out army on pull and call it a day. But then you also have really kind of complex stuff with dot snapshotting. You have when our attack power breakpoints for Death Siphon versus Death Strike, when our attack power breakpoints for for Death Coil versus Rune Strike, and stuff like that, where you really, really have to pay attention to your Vengeance and attack power.
Yeah, and I think for everybody that's watching, if you play a Blood DK or a Prot Warrior, or to be fair, any tank in general, make sure you check out Rihanna's channel. I'll put a link in the description and everything, and all of these min-maxy finds that get discovered throughout the course of Mr. Pandaria, I'm sure he will be making videos on.
Certainly.
Cool. And then finally, and this is a bit of a broad one, it's not really specifically to do with tanks, but we can just get our thoughts on this and then we can get out of here. Like, to me, this is a big change. Like, I've got to be honest, I know many people will just look at this and be like, oh, it's only pre 5.4 Vengeance, it's not a big deal. I look at it and I see it as a big deal. I think the fact that Blizzard are messing with, quite honestly, one of the biggest core systems of raiding, you could say, like, a lot of stuff is balanced around Vengeance and the amount of damage and healing that the tanks do. And it was a change that was made back in the day to say, no, this is not good. We don't want it this powerful. And now they're kind of like reverting it. For me, this shows that they are actually willing to make changes. Like, how do you feel about that? Do you think this is an isolated incident or a sort of an example of things to come?
There is a very real possibility that it's just a case of, crap. This whole DR thing, the math, the coding, we just can't figure it out. Let's just remove that. Oh, also, by the way, we don't like the monks abusing and bugging our Vengeance. Let's just remove that. You know what? Maybe we need to increase the attack power a little bit just to compensate for that. Okay. All right. Let's not think about Vengeance anymore. Possibility for sure, but I think it's indicative of a much more hands-on approach with the expansion. And I'm really hoping that's the case. Maybe it's just me, on the copium. I think if we look on Cataclysm, we look at the contrast of, even just the beta period where you actually had a lot of developers being engaged. You had actual GMs, talking to people on the beta. You don't have the same hype and the same, new things coming out from Season of Discovery. I think it's promising. I hope that this kind of trajectory and effort on the game does stick around.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. As I say, they took me by surprise very early on. At the end of the day, I've followed and covered the developments of all of the expansions, all of the classic betas, over the last 5 years, and this is different. They're handling this different to how they did Wrath of the Lich King, which they already knew was going to be one of their most successful expansions. And I still feel like even the MOP beta is getting more love than that did. And when they put in, and I know this sounds minor and you know, it won't bother that many people, but it does bother me. You know, when they added the Tome of Flying for alts to MOP, and they done it so soon, I was like, oh, wow. Like, that really, really took me by surprise, because I was expecting to be crying about that in videos, you know, all the way up until the week before launch. And the fact they went, yeah, like, it makes sense, let's put it in. Like, that's huge. That was a sign straight away that, hang on, they're not only listening, but they are actually willing to do things that make sense. So I think it's important that, you know, the class discords do discuss things and share it with Blizzard, whether it's on the forums or in bug reports in game, if you're on the beta, like whatever. Because I do think if the changes that are put forward make sense, they'll do it.
Yeah, no, I agree. You could definitely tell that more developers are playing the game as well. So that's a good thing. It's a good thing for sure.
Definitely. All right. Well, thank you, Riani. It's always a pleasure to spend some time with you, and hopefully
Likewise.
we'll be spending some time together to do some gold challenge modes.
Exactly. Looking forward to it.
I am also very much looking forward to that. So once again, everyone, make sure you go check out Riani's channel in the link in the description, and I'll put it in the pinned comment as well. I'll put your Twitch on there as well, so if you want to go and see him actually playing the tanks live and go and ask him loads and loads and loads of questions to annoy him as much as possible, that'll be fantastic. Any last words?
If you're on the beta next weekend, go ahead and pump for me.
Right, well, thank you, mate. I'll speak to you later, and I'll see everybody else probably in the comments. Peace out.